Greetings and welcome to another episode of Businesstalk podcast. I am your host Deepak from India. We are honored to have Dr. Andrea Gregg, who served as the Director of Learning Experience Design and Associate Research Professor in Mechanical Engineering Department at the Pennsylvania State University, joining us as our esteemed guest for this episode. Dr. Gregg's expertise spans educational assessment and evaluation, engineering education, and faculty development. Her research interests include online and distance learning, the efficiency of teaching and learning in mechanical engineering, learners' experiences in online and hybrid environments, the mediating role of educational technologies, micro-credentialing, student motivation, UX learning management systems, and online course design. She actively contributes to both the Penn State community and external organizations. Dr. Gregg holds two Bachelor of Arts degree in History and Mathematics from Northwestern University. She continued her academic journey the Pennsylvania State University, receiving a Master of Arts in Speech Communication, followed by a PhD in Learning, Design and Technology. In this episode, Dr. Andrea Gregg shares thought-provoking insights from her research-driven book, High Impact Design for Online Courses, Blueprinting Quality Digital Learning in 8 Practical Steps. So without further delay, let's welcome Dr. Andrea Gregg to the podcast. Dr. Andrea, thank you for graciously accepting our invitation. It is a truly an honor to welcome you with us today.
Yeah, Deepak, thank you so much for having me, and it's great to get the opportunity to talk to you and others about the book and about learning experience design.
Thank you. Professor, how does the HIDOC model address the distinct challenges faculty face when designing online or hybrid courses without extensive administrative or technical support?
So that question gets at the heart of why we wrote the book. So Bethany, Penny, and myself, the three of us, have all worked in instructional design capacities kind of at various points throughout our career and have worked really closely with individual faculty to help them figure out how to best design an online course. And kind of from the accumulation of that, we synthesized and tried to create a book. The first target audience is faculty who don't have or have limited instructional design support. So we intend the book to sort of be a stand-in for an instructional designer. So, and we wrote it kind of thinking like the tone is meant to be very conversational. And if you were the faculty and we were meeting to talk about your course, we tried to write it in that sort of a tone. So one thing I did want to mention is we do get the question of why a new design model. And it's important to note that we are very much not trying to recreate a wheel, but most of the design models out there that we're trained on and that students are exposed to were created not for the online context. So what's unique about this, especially for faculty, is that we assume an online context. And it's easier to go from online to face than face to online. And what we found is that if you don't have a guide and you don't have sort of help doing this, what people do just because of time and all the limitations is try to just convert a face-to-face course to an online context. And that typically isn't a great experience for the faculty or the learners.
Professor, can you elaborate on the importance of conducting a learner analysis during the initial stages of the HIDOC process and how it influences subsequent design decisions?
Yeah, so this is the first step in the model. It's an 8-step model. And the learner analysis, I have to say, for all the faculty that I've worked with, and we've given a lot of workshops, it typically ends up being the favorite step and very eye-opening. And the fundamental thought process with this step is you can't control who your learners are typically, but you can design for it. So it asks you to think about things like who your learners are likely to be. Are they working adults? Are they Do they travel for work? Or do they have computers? Are they more likely to be on Mac or PC? All of those characteristics, are they in the military? What kind of like life circumstances are they likely to be in? Do they have reliable internet? Because that will impact sort of how you think about your course design. And then what are they likely to know coming into your course? So what kind of assumptions can you make about their background knowledge? And also, what are misconceptions they're likely to have? So even if you've never taught the course before, you can think about kind of your topic in general, public discourse. What are misconceptions people have about it that you find yourself needing to clarify? You can design all of that into your course. And similarly, common areas of challenge. It's typical in most courses that certain areas are easier than others. So for the areas that are harder, more difficult, more complex, require more practice, you design for that. If it's something that is a kind of harder concept, harder technical equation or technical calculation, harder tool to use, you build in extra time, extra supports. And then the other thing that we really emphasize in this step is relevance to learners' lives and interests. So when you're all of us, just by the nature of how our brains work, attach to and learn better from things that we think matter. So it could be it matters to my future job, it matters because of my belief system, but how is it relevant? So try to contextualize it. And those are the kind of things that we ask about in that first step that can kind of help you design for who your likely learners are likely to be.
Professor, what strategies from the book can help faculty write measurable and meaningful learning outcomes for an online course?
Okay, so I really like talking about this because often learning objectives are something that faculty find to be busy work or something that they have to kind of do because their instructional designer asked them to do it. So, what we emphasize is if you do it right, it becomes the foundation for everything else. And it creates an aligned course where you're able to cut out stuff that isn't necessary and make sure you're covering and assessing what is. But some practical strategies are first, don't try to write measurable learning outcomes. Decide what your big goals are. Why are you teaching this course? If you were to talk to your students 5 to 10 years from now, what would you most hope they take from your course? That in 10 years they can still do that you taught them. So think big picture. Don't immediately try to create measurable learning outcomes. It's too hard and then it feels too challenging. So remember what's exciting about this topic and what you hope your learners get excited about. Then draft learning outcomes, but again, don't try to force measurable verbs. Don't worry, use the word understand or know, things that often are not measurable. And then once you've got that, then rewrite for verbs that can be assessed. And the big sticking point is often we say we want students to understand something, and we know what that means. We know what it looks like. A student doesn't. Understand can have so many different meanings, but that we want students to be able to evaluate or write or create. These are words that you can observe. It's hard to observe understanding, but I can observe something in writing. I can observe something that was created. So I think that's important. And finally, iterate between the steps. So this step two, you're creating your learning outcomes often for the first time. As you get further in the process, you're going to realize either a learning objective was or learning outcome was incomplete. Maybe you missed one. Maybe you thought one was important, but you realize actually, I'm not assessing for this. It isn't a core learning outcome. So kind of approach it gently, like you would with any writing. Draft first, then revise. Um, and iterate, like realize these are not set in stone at this point. It's your starting point, and they're going to get revised as you continue the design process.
Professor, in what ways does the HIDOC approach encourage the creation of structured sequence learning modules that foster a sense of community among online learners?
Okay, so I think that one thing that I always say is my personal approach to designing online learning is the Steve Krug, he's a usability expert, web usability expert model of don't make me think. So his argument is when I'm at a website, don't make me think about how to purchase the product that's in my cart. Don't make me think about where to click. Make it intuitive, make it obvious. In an educational setting, of course, we want learners to think, but we want them to think about the things that matter, not how to submit their homework, not where they go, not if they're in the right space. So part of this learning path is creating clear kind of steps for the learners to go through. One of the things that you'll see throughout the book and the one of the hardest things with online is that you don't have that regular context of meeting, of reminders, of we finished this topic, now we're moving to this. So creating that clear learning path in those modules allows you to build community. If your learners are confused about where they are or they're frustrated because they don't know kind of how to submit something, any learning community that's created is going to be negative. But if they have a clear path, things are laid out in a logical way where they're not thinking about the unimportant things, then you build in opportunities for connection, for learning community.
Professor, what are the some best practices recommended for designing both summative and formative assessments in digital learning environments?
So this goes back to what I was saying about alignment. You want everything tied together. So you're going to have course learning objectives. And these are kind of your stakes in the ground. Again, in when they leave this course, what are they able to do? So your assessments get at, have you seen them do it? So it's not just saying my goal for you is that you can do this. Your assessment is, I'm going to actually observe you doing it through this assessment. So summative assessments are bigger, higher stakes, they're exams, they're papers, they're projects. Um, and that's where you're observing, you're evaluating their learning. Did they meet the learning objectives? Your formative assessments, so your summative should tie to your learning objectives. Are they demonstrating that they can do this? Your formative assessments are smaller and they often fold into or build up to a summative and they allow you to see how they're doing. So you get feedback for yourself on where they're struggling, where they're successful. And there are also spaces they get feedback. So for example, if it's a design project and you're looking at their prototypes or sketches, you're giving feedback on it, and that's allowing them to improve. If it's a paper, you're giving feedback on a draft or an outline. If it's if the big assessment is an exam, quizzes let them see how they're doing in smaller ways. So alignment's really important, starting with the end in mind. Like, what do I want them to be able to do? How do I know they've done it? And then how do I get to them to that point? And then again, iterating. So when you're working on your assessments, you may find it's really important that they do this project. And then you go back to your learning outcomes and realize you didn't put anything in the course that addresses all that they need to be able to do with that project. So again, treating the model as iterative is really an important way to get to kind of a better final product.
Professor, could you share practical tips for curating or developing instructional material that effectively support online student engagement and success?
Yeah, so I think that curating is kind of an underutilized method for high quality content. So one of the reasons that faculty and professors get overwhelmed with an online course is they think content first. How do I get all my lectures up there? How do I record all of these things or write all of this stuff? And there is such good high quality stuff out there that you can think about things that may already be created that you can integrate into your course. And I'll say for this, like talking to academic librarians can be a very helpful way to start. Finding out what's in public domain, what's Creative Commons license that you actually can integrate into your own materials. Um, I mean, some examples like open textbooks, open courseware. A lot of these can be more discipline specific. So, talking to your colleagues, do you have any videos you show demonstrating this concept? Some are more STEM focused, more humanities focused, but there's so much out there. And again, looking for public domain, looking for Creative Commons license so that you're allowed to integrate it. You're creating through when is your voice essential? When are you the leading expert in this and you need to be delivering these lectures or you need to be writing the course content? I will say when you're including external material, it's really important that you're still the glue around it. You don't want to just kind of plop an article in there without introducing why it's relevant or what you want them to be doing with it. So you're their still the course instructor and their guide, even if you do use some external sources. The last thing on that I'll say is you definitely want to, in addition to looking at copyright stuff, if you can get accessible materials that are already accessible, that's really helpful. So if it already has a transcript, if it's a visual, something visual and it already has descriptions, that helps a lot on the accessibility side.
Professor, how does HIDOC suggest selecting and integrating technology tools to enhance learning while minimizing technical barriers for students?
So the motto, our kind of motto and philosophy is pedagogy first, technology second. That the learning experience, and again, going back to those learning outcomes, is the most important thing. The technology supports it. And what that means is don't add technology for technology's sake. Now, there is one exception to this, and this would be in technology-based courses. So I taught an edtech course, and the course was all about tools. So there was left and right tools in there. But students were learning how to go through all those tools, et cetera. For the most part, most disciplines, you're trying to teach certain content and skills. So if there is a technology you need, so for example, if you're doing computer assisted design in an engineering class, you need some CAD software. So if you can get something that's supported by your school, that's better because then you're not becoming the help desk. A very common challenge is you include an external tool and then you end up answering questions about it. So I think um, as much as possible, make use of the learning management system that your school has or that you're using for your course. As much as possible, make use of other tools that may have already been vetted by your organization. And then, sort of, the last resort would be if you have no other choice than an external tool.
Professor, what type of support structures does the HIDOC model recommend to promote learner success and retention in online courses?
So just like it can be very different to design and teach a course online, it's very different to learn online. So it typically requires more self-motivation, more time management, etc. But as with all things, there's ways to design the course that can help with that. So like I said earlier, you don't want students trying to figure out where they should be or when something is due. Um, and what we find is that people in person often say a lot of things that help students kind of know where they are in the flow of the course. So, for example, at the end of a class, okay, see you next Monday. We're closing out the topic of X and we'll be starting the topic of Y. In an online course, it's easy to forget that you add those visual or those verbal clues. So you might just have topic X close and topic Y start without putting that transition in. Um, Similarly, we find with assignments that in an in-person course, if you have an assignment, especially one that's major, students will ask questions. And as you're answering those questions, you're elaborating on the assignment. So students have a better sense of what they're going to be doing. In an online course, often people just put up the assignment with no additional context, no explanation. So some big supports are more context for everything. So in a module, let's assume it spans a week, you want sort of an intro to that module. Here's what we're covering. Here's what you're going to be working on. Here are your deliverables. And then something that closes out that week or that module. So here's what we covered. Here's looking ahead. These are what we're working on next. Reminders of in 3 weeks, this big assignment is due. Other things are just remembering to put in all the supports that students might need. Are there tutoring services? Is there help desk number? All of that so they know where to get help. Because again, often these students are disconnected from the kind of main ebb and flow of the on-ground school. And so you want to make that stuff very explicit.
Professor, how is continuous improvement woven throughout the HIDOC steps, and what self-reflection strategies does the book offer to help faculty revise and refine their digital courses?
So I had one of my very early bosses had said like an online course is never done, it's only delivered. And I think that remains true to this day, that it's something you always are thinking about. Oh, I could add this, or I could revise this, or I could improve this. And so the reality is at some point you have to stop adding things and the course starts. But often oh, I wish we would have added these things, or next time it runs, it's really important that we do X, Y, or Z. So one of the continuous improvement things is keeping track of that. So before the course even starts, note the things you want to look at for next time. Another thing is um, collecting feedback from students. And this can be something that is more formal, like an end of course evaluation, but it can also be very informal, short things like a one question survey or two question survey, one thing you're confused about, one thing you learned. And all of that is giving you information about where the course is working and where it's not. And lastly, keep a running document of your own observations. So it's almost always the case as you're grading an assignment, as you're answering student questions, you're noting and you're observing, gosh, 5 students asked about this concept. Next time it runs, I need to put in some additional resources. Or, wow, they really missed the mark on this assignment. Their performance was really disappointing. Next time around, I need to do a better rubric so they know what's expected. So I think just keeping track of those things explicitly in a document, just have a running document. You could put a document in your learning management system and hide it from the students and just use it throughout the semester to put your notes in. And then look at that with your student surveys, et cetera. And then you kind of prioritize, okay, what do we change for next time?
Dr. Andrea, I would like to conclude this episode with one last question. Can you highlight a compelling case study from section 2 of the book that demonstrates the HIDOC model in action, showing tangible improvements to online course quality and learner outcomes?
So one of my favorites, because it is so common and so easy to do, is the case of the third-party tool and technology issues. And I talked about this a little bit before, but in this case, a professor has a tool, he includes it in the course. He knows it's pretty easy to use, and he assumes students won't have trouble with it. And then, at the 11th hour, students are trying to meet the assignment deadline. They're using this technology. He's getting emails left and right about how it doesn't work, about how the company's help desk number isn't working, etc. So all of this, I think, is first starting with learner analysis. One thing about this tool is it's PC only. Well, half of his class were on Apple computers. So thinking about who's likely to take your course, are they going to have only one type of computer? And maybe you're in a program that gives everyone an iPad and that's what they're using, then you can make that assumption, but often you can't. And then assuming this technology is necessary and you've already done the alignment and everything, try to find something that is supported by your school, because then they're fielding the help desk calls. And lastly, if it is something you're supporting, test, document how to get access to it, and give low stakes assignments before they have to use it. So here's a simple example. In a course where they had to use an external software, the first week, they have to submit a screenshot showing they created their account for that software, they were able to make it work, and so that part's done. So in 5 weeks, when the real assignment happens, they've already worked through kind of the headache of creating the account, learning how to use it, etc. So definitely scaffold for external tools. You save yourself and your students a lot of headaches.
Listeners, thank you for joining us today. We are grateful to Dr. Andrea Gregg for sharing her valuable expertise and insights. Be sure to check out her book and stay tuned for our next episode. Thank you, Dr. Andrea Gregg, for sharing insights from your book with our audience. We truly appreciate your time and efforts in making this episode possible and valuable. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. And thanks to all the listeners.